Alright, today we're talking about the blues. I'm going to teach you how to play it and teach the theory behind it. So the blues is something that I teach all my students because it's a great type of music that obviously led to a lot of other things like rock and roll and all the music that we have today. It's also a really good way to learn how to solo and improvise over a simple form of music. So the first concept about the blues that I want to talk about is a little bit about the theory. So if you want to just learn how to play, go ahead and skip ahead a little bit. So the blues is a 3-chord progression that uses the 1, the 4, and the 5 out of any given key. Okay, so what do I mean by that? Well, every key, and that's kind of the tonal center, that common sound that you're hearing. In this case, we're going to be using the key of A. If you were to hear the kind of do, re, mi behind the key of A. Okay, so we've all heard that before. That's my key. So all those notes are from the same pool, all the chords that are built off of each one of those notes. We give a number, okay? So each one of these pitches of the major scale, we're going to find a chord from, okay? So if I take that same scale that I'm playing in this 5th position and I walk up, that's just to show you how it is on one string, kind of in a horizontal fashion. Now if I went and put a chord to each one of those, and you don't need to know how to play all this yet, but just to understand the concept. Here's my 1 chord. The 2 chord is minor. The 3 chord is minor. The 4 chord is major. The 5 chord is major. I'm going to go down here for the 6th chord being minor. Okay, and then the 7th chord is diminished, and back to 1 is major. So you can see how all those qualities of chords, meaning major or minor and diminished, make it sound like that same do, re, mi sound that we originally heard. Okay? If I just played any random chord, something doesn't sound right. That's because if I just pick random chords, those aren't drawing from the same pool of original notes, those original 7 different notes. Okay, so now we know that the blues has 3 different chords. And I said they are the 1, which is A, the 4, which is D, and the 5, which is E. Okay, so that's the first thing we need to know. So a good way to remember that, if you're already familiar with your bar chords, we can play it like this. And you can remember the 1, 4, 5 from this shape. I have a 6-string root bar chord, meaning my root is on the 6th string for A. If I play a major shape, which is this A-shaped bar chord, because the root is on the A string, there's my 4 chord right below it. And then a whole step above that, one whole step being this distance, E at the 7th fret, with that same 5th string root. Now I have 1, 4, 5. You can remember this sound from songs like like Louie Louie by the Kingsmen, or that song from Greece, whatever that's called. Okay, so that shape, any key that you put it in, so let's say I move to a different key like G. Now I'm on the 3rd fret. My 1, 4, 5 will always follow that pattern. If I'm in F, if I'm in C. So that's a good way to remember that little, I think of it like a little L shape. Okay, so in the key of A, the blues that we'll be dealing with today, it's A, D, and E. Okay, so usually in the blues, with the history of the music, they don't just use regular major chords. So we need to play something that's called a dominant 7 chord, or just 7 for short. So the way we would play that in these bar chord forms would be called an A7. And that's where I take my pinky off and expose this minor 7 interval in the chord. With the D, it's the same idea. I need to expose that note there. And what that's really doing in a theoretical way is taking a triad and turning it into a 7th chord. and in this case, specifically a dominant 7 chord. A7, D7, and E7. Okay, so now we have the chords that are needed for the blues, but it still doesn't, if I just randomly play these, it might sound bluesy, but it doesn't quite sound like the blues yet. And that's because there's a very specific form that the blues is played in. If you go to a blues festival and you're there all day, you'll start to be like, why does this all sound the same? Well, for the most part, it's because they're playing essentially the same form of music, which is only 12 bars long, over and over and over again. Maybe in a different key, maybe with different words, you know, all the different stylistic things you could do to a song, but the idea is that these same 12 bars, a sequence of chords are happening over and over and again. So, the 12-bar blues goes like this, and there's only a couple variations with it. I'm going to show you the main variation that I like to play, and it goes 1, and this is, you're going to play this chord for a whole measure so when I say this. So the 1 chord, or A7, for 4 beats, then you go to the 4 chord for 4 beats. Back to the 1 chord, and the 1 chord again. 4, 4, back to 1, 1, 5, 4, 1, 5. And you can hear that the way that form ends, it kind of begs to go back to the 1. That's a very common resolution, is when you hear the 5 chord, we're not satisfied. We want it to go back somewhere. And so that's why the form keeps starting over and over again, is we want to hear 1. And that's that nice resolution that our ears are trained to hear. 5 to 1. Okay, so here's what the blues is going to sound like. And I'm going to play it first in bar chords, then I'm going to show a more simplified version with just open chords. So here's the whole form if I was doing every beat of every measure. A 1, 2, 3, 4. And that's where it ends, and that's where I would start repeating that same form. So one thing I have all my students do is memorize that 12-bar pattern. 1, 4, 1, 1, 4, 4, 1, 1, 5, 4, 1, 5. Because you want to be able to play that consistently without mistakes, because it's kind of a common language between musicians. If you go to jam with someone and they want to play the blues, that's likely the form that they're going to play. And if you get off and play the 4 chord 3 times on the second line, they're going to be somewhere else and you guys are going to get all kind of screwed up. So, alright, so now I'm going to show you that with regular chords. If you're not as advanced enough to play the bar chord form yet, that's something you'll learn a little later on. But open chords, we can do the same thing with A7. And that's a very easy beginner chord because it only has 2 fingers. We have D7. And we have E7. So pause the video, go learn those, and you can play it the same way. Okay, so the other thing you'll notice is that I'm only using a quarter note down strum. So for every beat, 1, 2, 3, 4, I'm using a down strum. I think everyone should start with that. If you're going to practice with your metronome, that's the little box that clicks for you, or you have an app on your phone that does that. And I'm also tapping my foot to that same beat. You don't want to try to do any fancy down and up strumming just yet until you can really consistently just focus on that downbeat and play in time with your foot tapping, because eventually your right hand's going to get more complicated and you want your left foot to be able to stay steady and not copy what your hand's doing. Okay, it's one of those coordination things like patting your head and rubbing your belly. Okay, so the next idea with that, if you've already got that down and you understand the concept so far, again, we've got the 1, the 4, and the 5. Now, if I wanted to find those chords in a different key, let's say you're like, hey, my friends are jamming in the key of G. A doesn't really help me. Okay, well, you need to go find those 3 chords in a different key. In this case, if I'm in the key of G, G is the 1 chord, C is the 4 chord, and D is the 5 chord. So all I would do is go, okay, I know my 1, 4, 5 now. It's G, C, and D. And then I would turn those into dominant 7 chords, meaning I would make them G7, C7, and D7. And I would copy that same form that we've already discussed, which you hopefully will memorize. 1, 4, 1, 1, 4, 4, 1, 1, 5, 4, 1, 5. Okay? That's how you would transpose it, meaning change the key if you want to do it in a different key. Now the next thing that I teach my students, after they've played this for a couple weeks and they've memorized the form, is I like to show them that the blues is a simple form, so we can it's so simplistic that we can build off of it and keep adding to it, because you've seen people obviously play a way crazier version of the blues than just these chords that I'm strumming out. So one way we're going to advance on that whole idea of kind of building off this original simplistic form of the blues is I'm going to show you in the next video how to play what I call the shuffle riff, and that is just kind of a riffier way to play. Instead of the rhythm of the chords just strumming, we're going to do this. And I'm going to explain how to play that over the form in the next video. So please subscribe and hit the notification bell if you guys like these videos, and comment below with any thoughts or questions. Thank you.